your judgment on Nevada, on Arizona tonight, and then I want to turn to Georgia after you just.
Well, I can tell you as a group, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 states in which the same exact pattern took place. That is so unusual that it cannot be coincidental. On the morning of the election, when the mail-in ballots were being looked at and counted, the Republican inspectors were not allowed to get near the ballots. They were put in corrals, right, 20 to 30 feet away. Amazing. And while the counting went on, they could see nothing but white envelopes being passed back and forth. In other words, they couldn't see the writing on the envelope that would verify the ballot. And then the envelope was thrown away. At that point, the law is violated because the law requires that there be observation by both sides. That's the only way we can protect these mail ballots from fraud. The minute they're separated, it becomes a secret ballot, and we never know exactly what was connected to it with those envelopes. So this pattern couldn't possibly have
can't
occurred.
Be an accident.
Well, think about it, Lou. It means on Election Day, the chief Democratic crook in Philly wakes up and has the same idea as the one in Pittsburgh, the one in Detroit, the one in Milwaukee, same idea as the one in Nevada,
Georgia,
in Reno, in Phoenix, Arizona, and Atlanta, Georgia. They all do the same thing. They all put the Republicans in corrals. I mean, they must have at least subcontracted for the corrals. So we're going to take discovery. I think this was a common plan. In any event, I mean, the vote in Pennsylvania has to be altered to throw out these illegal ballots. So that's going to overturn. I mean, he was ahead. But in fact, the funny thing is, we have 682 illegal ballots. Remember on election night, he was ahead by 740,000 votes?
Right.
Sounds like this is exactly the plan they had to overcome the 700,000 votes.
Well, that's the allegation and the suspicion of so many. Also, the voting machines and the irregularities, the anomalies, as some want to call it. But again, they share, in many cases, the same electronic voting companies providing the software and the machines, and the same irregularities. It's what is your judgment on that as we close out here?
My judgment is that when Hillary Clinton said to Biden about 4 weeks ago, "Don't concede no matter what," she meant even if you're behind by 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania, Joe, don't worry, we'll fix it for you. I mean, that's an extraordinary number to make up, Lou. 800. I never saw that 800,000 vote margin made up. And when you consider the fact they wouldn't let us look at a single ballot. So now, why, if these ballots are legitimate, would you not let us look at it and remove this issue? Why do you want to give us this issue all over the country if it's not critical? I mean, and these are all the states I'm mentioning, these are all the states in which he had to catch up, right? Except maybe for Arizona. He was behind in Pennsylvania. He was behind in Wisconsin by a lot. He was behind in Michigan by 5 points. He was behind in Georgia.
According to preliminary results, voters across the nation elected and re-elected Republican senators to a degree that actually stunned prognosticators. Likewise, the American people seem to have reacted to House Democrats' radicalism and obstruction by shrinking the Speaker's majority and electing more Republicans. And then there's the presidential race. Obviously, no states have yet certified their election results. We have at least 1 or 2 states that are already on track for a recount. And I believe the president may have legal challenges underway in at least 5 states. The core principle here is not complicated. In the United States of America, all legal ballots must be counted. Any illegal ballots must not be counted. The process should be transparent or observable by all sides, and the courts are here to work through concerns. Our institutions are actually built for this. We have the system in place to consider concerns, and President Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options. If any major irregularities occurred this time of a magnitude that would affect the outcome, then every single American should want them to be brought to light. And if Democrats feel confident they have not occurred, they should have no reason to fear any extra scrutiny. We have the tools and institutions we need to address any concerns. The President has every right to look into allegations and to request recounts under the law. And notably, the Constitution gives no role in this process to wealthy media corporations. The projections and commentary of the press do not get veto power over the legal rights of any citizen, including the President of the United States.
Is the State Department currently preparing to engage with the Biden transition team? And if not, at what point does a delay hamper a smooth transition or pose a risk to national security?
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. Right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a minute afternoon, will also be successful. I went through a transition on the front, and I've been on the other side of this. I'm very confident that we will do all the things that are necessary to make sure that the government, the United States government, will continue to perform its national security function as we go forward. Right? It took us 37 plus days in an election back in 2000. We conducted a successful transition then. I'm very confident that we will count, and we must count every legal vote. We must make sure that any vote that wasn't lawful ought not be counted. That dilutes your vote if it's done improperly. Got to get that right. When we get it right, we'll get it right. We're in good shape.
Pennsylvania is a case study in just this. Allow me to just broadly review 3 points that have happened in Pennsylvania. Number one, in Philadelphia, poll watchers who are legally permitted to be there and observe the vote count were blocked from observing the count. Our poll watchers were put behind barricades in a massive room. They were many feet from the counting process, and in fact, when you look at all of the tables, many hundreds of feet, in fact, from the tables in the very back. They were completely in the dark, completely unable to oversee the vote count, as was their legal right. An observer on the scene described it this way. Imagine being on a football field. You're on the 10-yard line and expected to make a call in the end zone on the other side of the field. It is unacceptable. An intermediary court ruled on the side of the campaign, on the side of transparency and allowing the poll watchers to observe the count. But what did the Democrat Pennsylvania Supreme Court do? They issued an administrative stay, effectively pushing back our poll watchers and denying them the access they deserve to sit and watch the count. Ask yourself this: what are Pennsylvania Democrats hiding? Why can't poll watchers simply observe the count? Second, Article 1, Section 4 of the United States Constitution clearly states this: the time, place, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. That's right, the state legislature is constitutionally the one making the decision. But the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Kathy Boockvar, and the Democrat-tilted Pennsylvania Supreme Court have continually disregarded the Constitution, making decisions clearly in the domain of the Pennsylvania legislator. In fact, maybe there's a reason the Secretary of State, Boockvar, keeps substituting her will for that of the legislature in a completely unconstitutional fashion. Perhaps it's because she has motive. In fact, she has shown her partisan hatred tweeting this: using the title, quote, president before the word, quote, Trump really just means the office of the presidency. We see where her motives stand. And finally, a mere survey of the facts shows that voters in blue counties like Philadelphia County were given certain privileges that voters in red counties were not afforded. The Constitution's Equal Protection Clause requires uniform standards, but Democrat election officials created disparities depending on where citizens lived and where they voted in the state. Some counties set up satellite offices for backdoor early voting, whereas other counties did not. Some counties allowed pre-canvassing, where other counties did not. Voters in some counties were allowed to cure their ballots, whereas voters in other counties were not. What Pennsylvania has done is provide a case study into how to tip the scales of an election to functionally favor the Democrat Party. This has gone on nationwide. And I'll leave you with this. In DNC versus Wisconsin State Legislature, in another attempt to count late ballots that arrived after the election, Justice Gorsuch wrote, "Nothing in our founding document contemplates the kind of judicial intervention that took place here, nor is there precedent for it in 230 years of the court's decisions." He went on to say, "No one doubts that conducting a national election amid a pandemic poses serious challenges. But none of that means individual judges may improvise with their own election rules in place of those the people's representatives have adopted." They have taken a global pandemic and turned it into a nationwide electoral epidemic. They have taken, based on what they call a natural disaster, they have used that and turned this into a national disaster.
Him here today, 'cause there ain't no doubt he loves this land. God bless Trump.